While this podcast isn't rated explicit, the content may not be suitable for younger listeners. Welcome to Sex for Saints, the Christian couple's guide to great sex. I am your host, certified sex and marriage coach, Amanda Lauder. This is episode 392, Why Sexual Rejection Feels So Personal. Welcome to Sex for Saints, a podcast for Christian couples. My goal with this podcast is to help enlighten, educate, and inspire you to understand yourself, your spouse, and your sexuality better. I talk about sex in a way you probably haven't heard before. I'm bold, I'm direct, but I keep everything in line with my strong Christian values. Are you ready? Let's go. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Let's talk about one of the most painful experiences in marriage: sexual rejection. And not just the sting of hearing "not tonight," but that deep, gut-wrenching feeling that comes after. You know the one that I'm talking about. It's that voice in your head that whispers, "They don't want me. I'm not attractive enough. I'm not good enough. There must be something wrong with me." But here's the question we need to dig into today. Is your spouse actually rejecting you, or are they rejecting sex? Because there's a huge difference between these two things. And understanding which one is happening in your marriage could change everything. So let's start by being really clear about what we're dealing with here. When your spouse says no to sex, there are essentially two things that could be happening. The first type is they're rejecting the sexual activity itself. Maybe they're tired, stressed, not feeling well, dealing with hormonal changes, or just not in the mood. The rejection is about the act, not you as a person. And the second type is that they're rejecting you personally. And this is when the no comes from deeper relationship issues, resentment, anger, or a genuine dislike or disrespect towards you as their partner. Now, here's where it gets tricky. Both types of rejection can look exactly the same on the surface. Your spouse says, "I'm not in the mood," and rolls over. But the reason behind that response is completely different, and so is how you should handle it. I want you to think about it this way. If someone offered you your favorite dessert when you were already full from dinner, you'd probably say, "No thanks, I'm stuffed." That's not a rejection of the dessert or the person offering it. It's just bad timing. But if someone you couldn't stand offered you that same dessert, your no thanks would come from a very different place, right? So let's address the elephant in the room first. Sometimes the rejection is really about you. And I know that's hard to hear, but stick with me because understanding this is actually really empowering. Personal rejection in marriage usually stems from unresolved relationship issues. Maybe there's ongoing conflict that hasn't been addressed. Perhaps there's resentment building up from feeling unheard, unappreciated, or unsupported. Sometimes it's about feeling disconnected emotionally, like your spouse sees you as a roommate rather than a romantic partner. And yes, sometimes personal rejection is about attraction, both behavioral and physical. And this is probably the hardest truth to face, but it's important to be honest about it. Maybe your spouse has lost physical attraction due to significant weight changes, hygiene issues, or health problems. Or maybe they've lost emotional or sexual attraction because of behaviors that have become unappealing. Chronic negativity, selfishness, meanness, laziness, or addictive behaviors. Now, I know that this is painful to consider, but I've worked with couples where one partner had genuinely lost attraction to their spouse. Maybe the husband had become critical or controlling of his wife, and she literally felt repulsed by the thought of being intimate with him. Or perhaps the wife had developed such a negative, complaining attitude that her husband found her emotionally unattractive. Now, this doesn't make anyone a terrible person. We all go through seasons where we're not our best selves. But it does mean that sometimes the rejection really is about something that you have the power to change. Now, I had a client, let's call her Sarah. She realized that she was personally rejecting her husband's sexual advances because she felt like that he only paid attention to her when he wanted sex. And the rest of the time, he was glued to his phone or talking about work. She felt used, not loved. So when he'd reach for her at bedtime, her body would literally recoil because in her mind, he was reaching for what she could give him, not for her. Another example, I worked with a husband who had discovered his wife was rejecting him personally because he'd become critical and nitpicky about everything. How she loaded the dishwasher, how she disciplined the kids, how she managed their social calendar. She started to see him as someone who disapproved of her. So of course she didn't want to be sexually vulnerable with him. Now, if this is what's happening in your marriage, the sexual rejection is actually a symptom of a deeper problem. And here's the thing, this is information that you need. It's telling you where your marriage needs work. Now, before we go further, I need to address something specific for the women listening who find themselves as the higher desire partner in their marriage. This experience comes with its own unique pain, and I see you. Our culture perpetuates this myth that men always want sex more than women, that men are the pursuers and women are the gatekeepers. So when you're a woman who wants sex more than your husband, it can feel like you're broken or abnormal somehow. And I've had countless women tell me things like, I feel like such a freak. Aren't women supposed to be the ones saying no? Or I must be doing something wrong if my husband doesn't want me the way other women say their husbands want them. So let me be crystal clear, okay? There is absolutely nothing wrong with you for having a higher desire than your husband. Desire varies from person to person, regardless of gender. Some women have higher libidos. Some men have lower libidos. And that's completely normal. But I understand why the rejection feels particularly cutting when you're in this position. You're not just dealing with the pain of sexual rejection, you're also battling against cultural messages that tell you that this shouldn't even be happening. You might feel like you're too much or that you're being unseemly by wanting sex. One client of mine, Jessica, told me that she felt ashamed for even bringing up their sexual frequency with her husband because she'd internalized this idea that good women don't really care that much about sex. And she was suffering in silence, taking every rejection as confirmation that she was some kind of sexual deviant. And the truth is, when you're a woman experiencing sexual rejection from your male partner, all the same principles apply. It might be personal or it might not be. But you have the added layer of fighting against societal expectations that make you question whether your desires are even valid in the first place. I'm here to tell you that your sexual desires are valid. Your disappointment when rejected is valid. And you deserve to have these conversations with your spouse just as much as anyone else does. So how do you know if the rejection is personal? Well, I want you to start looking for patterns. Does your spouse seem to avoid physical affection in general, not just sex? Do they seem distant or disconnected in other areas of your relationship? Has there been ongoing conflict or tension that hasn't been resolved? Do you sense resentment or anger from them about other things? Have they expressed feeling unheard, unappreciated, or unsupported in your marriage? If you're seeing these signs, then yes, the sexual rejection might be more about the state of your relationship than about sex itself. This is a quick reminder. My Embrace You retreat is January 29th through February 1st in St. George, Utah, and I still have spots available. This is 4 days for you. We're talking catered meals, powerful classes, amazing guest speakers, and professional boudoir photography with hair and makeup included. This is your chance to strengthen your sexual self and your marriage in a supportive, judgment-free environment. The deposit is just $500 and it's due by the end of October. Total investment is between $1,500 and $3,000 depending on your choice of accommodations. If you've been thinking about it, this is your sign. Go to amandalauder.com/retreat and grab your spot before October ends. So here's what I really want you to hear. Most of the time, sexual rejection isn't personal. Most of the time, your spouse is just rejecting sex, not you. So let me give you some examples of what non-personal rejection looks like. So your wife says no because she's exhausted from a crazy day with the kids, work stress, or managing the household. Her no isn't about you, it's about her capacity in that moment. Your husband turns down sex because he's dealing with performance anxiety or stress. His rejection isn't about his desire for you. It's about his own internal struggles. Your spouse isn't interested in sex because they're going through hormonal changes, maybe postpartum, perimenopause, or side effects from medication. Their body isn't responding the way it used to, and that has nothing to do with how they feel about you. Maybe your partner is dealing with depression, anxiety, or other mental health challenges that affect their libido. Their brain chemistry is working against their desire, not their feelings for you. Now, I remember working with a couple where the husband was convinced that his wife didn't find him attractive anymore because she rarely initiated sex and often said no. Turns out she was dealing with severe anxiety that made her feel completely disconnected from her body. Once they understood this, she got help for her anxiety and their sexual relationship improved dramatically. Here's where we get into trouble. When we experience sexual rejection, our brains immediately start creating stories to explain what just happened. And unfortunately, our brains are really good at creating the worst possible story. Your spouse says, "I'm really tired tonight." And your brain translates that into, "They don't find me attractive. They're probably thinking about someone else. They don't love me anymore. I'm failing as a husband or wife." But what if their brain is actually saying, "I haven't slept well in 3 days. I have a headache. And I just want to close my eyes and rest." So the story you're telling yourself about their rejection might have nothing to do with reality. And those stories, those thoughts are what create the emotional pain, not the actual rejection itself. So how do you stop taking it so personally when it's not actually personal? You have to challenge the thoughts that you're having. So instead of "they don't want me," try "they don't want sex right now, and that's okay." Instead of "I'm not attractive enough," try "their desire is affected by many factors that have nothing to do with my attractiveness." Instead of "something is wrong with our marriage," try "everyone goes through seasons of higher and lower desire." So I teach my clients to get curious instead of hurt. When your spouse says no, instead of immediately jumping to conclusions, try asking yourself, what else could this be about? What might they be dealing with that I don't fully understand yet? Now, whether the rejection is personal or not, communication is key. But the conversation looks different depending on which type you're dealing with. So if you suspect it's personal rejection, you need to have a heart-to-heart about your relationship. Ask questions like, "I've noticed we seem disconnected lately. How are you feeling about us?" Or, "Is there something I've done to hurt you or made you feel distant from me?" Now, these conversations aren't easy, but they're necessary. And yes, you might hear some things that are hard to accept. But remember, if there are real problems in your relationship that are affecting your sexual connection, avoiding them is not going to make them go away. So if you believe it's not personal, the conversation might sound more like, "I notice sex hasn't been a priority for you lately. I want you to know that I am not going to take it personally, but I'd love to understand what you're experiencing so that I can support you better." So here's what I want you to walk away with today. Sexual rejection feels personal because sex is vulnerable and intimate. And our brains are wired to protect us from threats to our connection with our partner. But feeling like it's personal doesn't mean it's actually personal. Most sexual rejection is about circumstances, stress, hormones, mental health, physical health, or just the natural ebb and flow of desire in long-term relationships. It's not about you being unworthy, unattractive, or unloved. But sometimes, and I want to be honest with you here, sometimes it is about deeper relationship issues that do need to be addressed. And if that's the case, facing that reality, as painful as it might be, is the first step toward either healing your marriage or making informed decisions about your future. It's also a really good time to consider coaching. The key is learning to distinguish between the two and responding appropriately. Don't catastrophize every no into a relationship crisis, but also don't ignore patterns that might be telling you something important about the health of your marriage. All right, my friends, that is all I have for you today. Remember, love is a journey, not a destination. Stay committed, stay passionate, and stay connected. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Like what you're hearing on this podcast? Make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. Don't forget to leave me a review and share it with your friends.